By the late 1800s, practical photography had become a reality and was soon to be accepted as an art. In this somber photograph made in 1858 by Henry Peach Robinson, a young woman is seen on her deathbed. But its artistic value lay mainly in its being the world's first photomontage, in which 5 negatives were combined seamlessly to form a single image. But art soon gave way to opportunism, and opened a Pandora's box brimming with alleged spirit photos that were arguably or patently fraudulent. Techniques included multiple exposures, multiple negatives, and even primitive hand drawings and paintings. The alleged spirit faces and figures were depicted with a naive literalism, displaying none of the softness or subtle distortions seen consistently in the most convincing examples of visual ITC. Often the original photo had been pre-composed to allow for the insertion of these alleged spirits. Though some early spirit photos might have been legitimately paranormal, by the close of the 19th century, photography and fraud had truly become a marriage made in heaven. Fast forward now to the mid-20th century, when electronic photography, in the form of television, became widely available. EVP pioneer Friedrich Jürgensen was among the first to recognize its potential as a means of communicating with the departed, and often predicted that images from the other side would soon appear on television screens. Jürgensen spent his later years in the southern Swedish town of Hur, and died in October 1987. At the exact moment of his burial, his friends Claude and Ellen Thorlin, who lived about 250 miles to the north near Stockholm, experienced a strange phenomenon. According to Mrs. Thorlin, she heard an inner voice prompting her to switch on her TV and tune it to an unused channel. As she did so, the screen went dark. Then a spot of light appeared which grew into this image. As if to fulfill his own prediction, Jürgensen had apparently projected a fair likeness of himself onto the Thorlins' television screen, which they captured in this Polaroid photograph. But Jürgensen was not the first to produce images of the deceased on a television screen. That honor probably belongs to Klaus Schreiber of Aachen, Germany. In his youth, Schreiber had experienced deep poverty. Later in life, he suffered the loss of 8 close relatives, including his beloved daughter Karen, all within the span of a few years. Though plagued by ill health himself, he maintained a positive outlook, and in 1982 began experimenting with EVP. In one communication from a deceased relative, he was advised to try working with video. Today we take video recording for granted, but in the 70s and 80s it required clumsy, expensive videotape equipment. Trained as a saddlesmith, Schreiber understood little about this technology and at first was unsuccessful. But following further EVP advice from the other side, and with some help and encouragement from electrical engineer Martin Wenzel, Schreiber constructed a video feedback loop, which produced highly unstable forms that he was told could be manipulated by those on the other side. By 1984, Schreiber's perseverance paid off, and he began to receive many remarkable images. By laboriously advancing his tapes frame by frame, Schreiber was able to isolate and study these single images or short sequences in which the pictures would often emerge from random shapes. Since he had no means of editing his tapes, he simply rephotographed these clips onto a second videotape to preserve them. Some of Schreiber's video images were of unknown individuals or groups, but others were recognized as prominent figures, such as King Ludwig of Bavaria, Albert Einstein, Cistercian abbot Alois Wiesinger, German actresses Hildegard Schaefer and Romy Schneider, whose image we can see developing in this sequence of video frames. Not surprisingly, Konstantin Raudova himself made several brief appearances on Schreiber's video screen. But most intriguing of all were the images Schreiber identified as deceased relatives, including his grandfather, his mother Katerina, his sister Maria, a cousin of his son Robert, who died at age 22, his deceased wives Gertrude and Agnes, and his daughter Karen, who had died at the age of 16 after a difficult illness. Could all these images have been hoaxed? During a broadcast discussion about ITC on Luxembourg television, here's what German engineer Martin Wenzel said about Schreiber's work, as translated by Dr. Ernst Zinkowski.
Mr. Wenzel, it is in the nature of man, and it is good so, to be basically skeptical. Then one is able to inform oneself, and yet remaining skeptical, one may research. You controlled Schreiber's equipment and wrote a report? Yes. When Klaus Schreiber published his first images or presented them in the public, he invited me to visit his laboratory and observe everything, how he is working. He revealed everything. I could check anything down to the smallest cable. There was nothing hidden in any way, and I had to see that he worked without any tricks. It's only a very unconventional way to use a video camera.
In January 1988, following a second heart attack, Schreiber passed away, and within a few months apparently began communicating with his colleagues on Earth.
Afterwards, apparently Klaus Schreiber sent an image through the Transcommunication station in Luxembourg. And this image appeared in a computer system. So it was digitized, and it is clearly to be seen that it is Klaus Schreiber.
Rievenich, Germany, was the site of numerous ITC experiments during the 1980s and 90s. Here, Dutch TV personality Tineke de Nooi interviews Rievenich experimenter Adolf Hommes.
Ich habe Jürgensen kennengelernt damals in meiner Anfangsphase meiner sogenannten Forschung.
Ja.
Und habe das Buch von Jürgensen.
Hommes' early work focused on EVP and direct radio voice, which produced, among others, the following communication. Then, working with colleague Friedrich Malkoff, Hommes began experimenting with an old television set that had no connection to an antenna. Eventually, the experimenters received several striking pictures, including this one, of Anne de Guigné, a young French girl who died in 1922 and is now venerated by the Catholic Church. And this one, of Elisa Carolina Hommes, Adolf's mother, who had died shortly after his birth in 1935. According to Hommes and Malkoff, in numerous EVP contacts, Elisa had been serving as a communicator for an ITC contact group that was working from the other side to contact practitioners on this side. Vicky Talbot reports that late one night in July 2006, her television set turned itself on and off several times and displayed various black and white scenes of people asking to engage in two-way conversation with her. She says that in her astonishment and in the dark, she was unable to find her camera in time to capture this sequence of events. But she did eventually manage to snap one picture of the TV image, showing several youthful faces, before the episode ended. Here it is with some of the distortion removed, and here with some of the noise removed. Vicky says she now keeps her camera close to her TV set at all times, just in case.